From 1994 to 2005, there were over 2,500 PlayStation 1 games released. This was at a time when Sony, eager to differentiate themselves from their kid-friendly competition, associated the PlayStation brand with more mature and experimental releases. The result of the proliferation of games in such a short period and the abstract approaches to game design is that many hidden gems fell through the cracks. This is a list of 6 games that fall into this category that are worth checking out. Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection is a tremendously innovative first-person survival horror game, which laid the foundation for all horror shooters that would follow. The general lack of music, chilling sound design, incredibly low-key lighting, slow movement speed with heavy view bobbing, and sparse enemy encounters undoubtedly laid the foundation for many shooters in this style, from Doom 3, to Fear, to Stalker, to the more recent Alien Isolation. This wasn't the first first-person shooter with a darker aesthetic. 2 years prior, Unreal and Half-Life came out, which each had moments exhibiting horror influences, but both of those games had far faster paced movement speed and generally a more arcade approach to combat. The influence from Quake on those games was still very apparent, whereas Alien Isolation took the genre in a completely different direction, basing its approach to gameplay on the slower pace of the movie it's based off of. And that's part of the contributing factor as to why this game is forgotten. Alien Resurrection, the game, released 3 years after the movie, a massive span of time for any licensed game. Plus this game was panned by an industry which was only really familiar with the faster Quake-style shooters. It's obvious why this game was panned at the time, and has been forgotten, but in hindsight Alien Resurrection can be viewed as a precursor to many games since, and can be credited with pioneering a style of game that only came into prominence in the mid-2000s. LSD Dream Emulator. LSD is an episodic voyage through dreams. The game begins in your home, and where you go from here is entirely up to player choice. Interacting with certain stimuli in the level will transport the player to a scenario or location that is vaguely related to said stimuli. A dream ends when the player wakes up, which can either be forced by encountering a fail state like dying, or just after a certain amount of time within a dream. Where you ended up is charted in a dream journal, and then you go back to sleep, beginning in the same location as the last day. For a purposely ambiguous and abstract art game, LSD Dream Emulator is impressively engaging. Each journey into the dream world lets a vastly different outcome, evoking a different tone and mood. And in fact the game is most well known for its drastic shifts in tone, going from very angelic and peaceful locales to horrific and unsettling imagery. The game really captures this notion of gradually falling deeper into a dream, and it eventually turning into a hellish nightmare. The sheer amount to explore in the game is quite impressive, though I imagine most will be put off by the overall lack of purpose. If anything I've described sounds even remotely interesting, I'd highly recommend LSD Dream Emulator, as it's an experience unlike any other on the PS1. Vib-Ribbon. From the creators of Parappa the Rapper comes Vib-Ribbon, another rhythm game from the company, but a little more in line with the conventions of contemporary rhythm games. The player character moves along a line, and in time with music, encounters various obstacles, 4 obstacle varieties to be exact, each overcome with a single button press. The difficulty of the game not only escalates with the tempo of the song increasing, which is to be expected, but different obstacle types will combine, necessitating that the player press both buttons at once to get past cleanly. The escalation of difficulty is handled perfectly, as each new intricacy is built naturally on top of previous mechanics. Outside of how the game plays, Vib-Ribbon really sinks its teeth in with its minimal and cutesy design, particularly the leading character Vibri, who is absolutely adorable. And the music is really amazing, and not what you would expect from this type of game. Half the songs wouldn't sound out of place on the most recent Animal Collective album, though it could be argued all of these elements, the cutesy leading character, minimal vector graphics, and sometimes abrasive electronic music, don't really work together as a cohesive whole. Individually they're executed very nicely, and produce a very unique package that can't be found anywhere else. Star Gladiator Episode 1 Final Crusade. Star Gladiator is unlike any other 3D arena fighter of this era, as the genre was just gaining its bearings with simplistic and primitive titles like Virtua Fighter and the original Tekken. Here comes this incredibly fast-paced and weighty weapon-based fighting game that just oozes personality and flair. This is Capcom's first attempt at a 3D fighter, and as such they clearly approach it from the mindset of a traditional 2D fighting game. There's still an emphasis on performing combos and precise button inputs, and these refined traits Capcom carry over from franchises like Street Fighter, aid in giving Star Gladiator the depth that, in retrospect, many of these early 3D fighting games lack. Though the genre would eventually catch up with Star Gladiator. It being such a front-running game resulted in there being a lot of flaws in its design. As stated, this was Capcom's first attempt at this style of fighting game, and not all the experimentation in this game was successful. Though going in with that in mind, Star Gladiator can still be a lot of fun. Despite its flaws, the typical quality animation and fighting mechanics of a Capcom game are still here despite the shift to polygonal graphics. Diver's Dream. There are a lot of facets that make Diver's Dream unlike any other game available for the PlayStation 1. It's a deep-sea diving game, of which I believe there are only 3 on the PS1. This one, Treasures of the Deep, and Fluid. And of these, Diver's Dream is the only one wherein you're just an individual scuba diving. Diver's Dream also integrates management sim elements into the game. Near the beginning, most of the locations are open to you, but your ability to actually traverse these locations properly is limited to your gear. You need to collect treasure from the ocean floor before you can buy the more advanced gear. And that leads on to the final unique aspect of this game. Diver's Dream is essentially a free roaming game. You can do as little or as much as you like. You can enter a body of water for no greater reason than to swim with dolphins. You can collect treasures to buy better equipment to explore new locations, or you could just leisurely swim in your trunks without a care in the world. And if that's how you play the game, I don't blame you. The music is so calm and the gameplay is so slow that the game creates this super relaxing environment. There's no drive to the game or significant overarching purpose, but it's an easy game to play for half an hour just to unwind. Skullmonkeys. Skullmonkeys is a claymation platformer and a sequel to the point-and-click game The Neverhood. Due to both games sharing an animation style and similar dark settings, Skullmonkeys is often compared to Oddworld: Abe's Odyssey, though whereas that game is a cinematic platformer with an emphasis on puzzle solving, Skullmonkeys is a traditional faster-paced platformer. Due to both games having fluid and expressive animation and really tight platforming controls, Skullmonkeys is more comparable to Earthworm Jim. And from that comparison it's clear that Skullmonkeys takes full advantage of the PlayStation 1 hardware, as the animations are really smooth, the colour design is rich, and the multiple layers to the parallax scrolling aid in making the worlds of Skullmonkey appear convincing. And in honesty, visuals are the only area wherein Skullmonkeys excels. Though competent in all other areas, the ultimate takeaway is that the game looks gorgeous, but is otherwise not notable. Skullmonkeys is also rather short and has a harsh difficulty spike near the end, clearly designed to inflate playtime. Though these criticisms don't take away from Skullmonkeys' accomplishments in animation and art design, which is significant enough to warrant this game being played. Thank you for watching. Be sure to recommend more PlayStation 1 Hidden Gems down below. Consider liking this video to show your support and subscribing if you want to see more content like this in the future. Have a nice day. Peace.